right, we are talking about the hardening protein, the detox protein, or amino acid actually, and at times the toxic, somewhat toxic amino acid, actually a derivative of cysteine, is associated with toxicity. We'll be talking about that in a little bit. But before we do that, I want to spend a couple of minutes talking about something that we talk about all the time on this program, and that is the concept of fasting. Lent is coming up. I've gotten a bunch of letters from folks who want to experience fasting for themselves and want some good ideas about fasting. So for you guys who've been writing to me about fasting and about Lent, this is for you. The next couple of minutes we'll talk about fasting, and intermittent fasting actually, which is fasting periodically, every couple of days, every 3 days, once a week, a couple times a month. So first of all, fasting, obviously everybody knows, is basically not eating. That's pretty simple stuff. You just don't eat. Fasting, as defined by the Catholic Church, allows people to eat once a day during Lent. When Muslims fast during Ramadan, they're allowed to eat at night. A fast is technically just not eating, so between meals even can be considered a type of fasting. The time we spend at night, sleeping at night, that's also a type of fasting. That's why our morning meal is called the break fast. Fasting offers several mechanisms for improving health. For one thing, during a fast, the body is not using up its precious resources. This is so important. This is probably the main reason why fasting is a cornerstone of good health, why caloric restriction in general is the ultimate anti-aging strategy. The ultimate anti-aging strategy is simply caloric restriction, not even full-blown fasting, just eating less food. The greater our caloric intake, the greater the load on the body. This is just common sense. The more calories we eat, the more work our body does. And the more work our body does, the more likely degenerative diseases, and the faster we age, and the faster we die. This is just logic. The more work, the more metabolic work your body is doing, the shorter you're going to live, and the greater your likelihood for degenerative disease. Now, this is kind of interesting because you always hear about people talking about raising the metabolism. I heard a lady on TV, a dietitian, of course, talking about how important it was to raise your metabolism. It is not important to raise your metabolism. In fact, it's not even a good idea to raise your metabolism. You want your metabolic rate to be slow and strong, not fast. Metabolism is the sum total of chemical reactions in the body. It's the sum total of building chemical reactions in the body, and it's the sum total of breakdown chemical reactions in the body. In fact, if you add all the chemical reactions in the body that cause breakdown and all the chemical reactions in the body that cause buildup, that's what your metabolism is. Animals with faster metabolisms live shorter lives, not longer lives. You want your metabolism to be rebalanced, so more chemistry is going into building and breaking down. It's not that you want a higher metabolism, it's that you want to reproportion your metabolism so you have a greater proportion of chemical reactions involved in building than you do in breaking down. It's not the net metabolism that needs to increase, it's the way the metabolism is divided up. So you want more chemistry going on that involves building and less chemistry that involves breaking down. It's not metabolism in general that you want to increase. In fact, slowing things down is how you live longer, and the less you eat, the slower the chemistry is in the body. The more powerful the chemistry will be in the body. Even if we're hungry, we really don't need a lot of food, as long as it's nutritionally dense. You can get away with eating a lot less food than you think, even if you haven't eaten all day and you feel completely ravenous. If you really pay attention to your body and your digestive tract, you'll find that for the most part, even if you're completely ravenous, you haven't eaten all day, you'll find that you could be full and you can be satisfied with just a couple of bites of food. It doesn't take a lot. Experiment. The next time you're hungry, in fact, go for the next 6 or 7 hours without eating if you can. And it'll be good for you. All right, experience the sensations of hunger. And then after 6 or 7 hours, when you feel like you absolutely must eat something, you're hypoglycemic, you got low blood sugar, you absolutely have to eat. It probably won't happen that way, but let's say it does. Go have just a couple of bites of, say, a cucumber, or maybe a couple of mouthfuls of tuna fish out of the can, all right? Or maybe a hard-boiled egg. And you'll notice after 2 or 3 bites, you're nowhere near as hungry. If you're really paying attention, that's all you're going to need to feel satisfied. And that's even if you haven't eaten all day and you feel completely ravenous. Simply just paying attention to the body, paying attention to the digestive tract can be one of your best friends, can be one of the most important health strategies when it comes to caloric restriction and fasting for that matter. Digestion is work. Digestion requires energy, and the body uses energy to do all of its biochemical business. The more it's spending, the less it's going to have available. The more it's spending on digestion, the more it's spending on absorption of nutrients, on processing foods, the less energy it's going to have for anti-aging, for muscle building, for growth, and for repair. And even worse, when the body runs low on energy, emergency systems kick in, and that's really where we run into big problems when it comes to health and longevity. I'm Pharmacist Ben. You're listening to The Bright Side. We'll continue this discussion when we come back from our break. Okay, so fasting, super important. You guys, I've gotten a lot of letters from folks who want me to talk about fasting because Lent's coming up. Lent, the fasting that you do during Lent is not like a really big time fast because you are allowed to eat, at least according to the Catholic Church, once a day and still honor your Lent obligations. But really true fasting, if you really want to get the benefits of it, you got to do a 24-hour fast or a 48-hour fast. And you want to do it intermittently. You want to do it every couple of days, every 3 days, once a week, maybe a couple times a month. Just periodically give yourself a food holiday, a food break. Digestion is work. Absorption is work. And this is even under the best of circumstances. Even if you're just eating a salad, your immune system is going to become involved as the body has to purify and process and scout out the different kinds of components of foods to make sure they're friendly. There's a phenomenon called postprandial. Prandial means eating or meals. Postprandial inflammation. It's actually a microscopic inflammation that occurs after we eat anything, let alone the crap we eat. Most of us are eating, even if we eat really good food. So just simply caloric restriction or fasting can go a long way towards improving immune response, inflammatory response, anti-aging. The body's using energy for all of its work, for all of its biochemical work. And when it runs low on energy, emergency systems kick in. It's kind of like when you have too many windows open on your computer, and your computer will go into safe mode. It can do the basics in safe mode, but it's not really a healthy or fully functioning computer. Likewise, the body has limited resources, and the fewer windows it has open, or the less work it has to do, the healthier it's going to be. The less work your body has to do, the healthier you're going to be. It's as simple as that, really. It's not complicated. Less food, healthier body. Less work, healthier body. Food processing, digestion, and absorption are the ultimate workload on the body. Fasting is like giving your body a vacation. Fasting is like a holiday for your digestive system. The same way human beings need vacations and holidays to do their best work, so does the body. The key reason for fasting and caloric restriction's beneficial effects is the release of precious resources for healing, for growth, for repair, for muscle building, and for anti-aging. And once you understand the mechanism behind the health benefits of fasting, the fact that it gives the digestive system a break and that it frees up precious biochemical resources for health and wellness, you can see why it's not such a great idea to eat 5 or 6 meals a day. This is more dietitian mythology. Just like raising your metabolism is dietitian mythology. Sorry to rip on dietitians. You know, dietitians personally, I know some dietitians. They're nice people, but the science of dietetics, the mainstream science of dietetics, is filled with mythological nonsense, such as making your metabolism faster, such as eating 5 or 6 meals a day. That's the conventional wisdom from dietitians, from government authorized dietitians, mainstream dietitians. I still talk to many folks who incorrectly believe that eating, they call grazing on foods all day, is a good thing. It's not a good thing. Grazing on foods is a very bad strategy unless you're a cow or want to be a cow. If you eat all day, your digestive system is constantly working, and that means it's going to have less resources available to do the work of healing, to do the work of growing, to do the work of repairing, to do the work of building. And then there's the whole insulin connection to the benefits of fasting. Insulin, as we said so many times before in this program, is a kind of master hormone in the sense that it upregulates many different cell activities. It increases many different cell activities. And insulin affects every single one of the 100 trillion cells in the body. Insulin upregulates the activities of every single one of the 100 trillion cells in the body. And the prime stimulus for insulin secretion is food. As soon as we eat any carbs or protein, or if we eat fats that are associated with carbs and protein, cells get drenched in insulin. They get an insulin bath. And in addition to feeding cells, insulin also tells cells to divide and grow. It tells cells, sends cells the message to upregulate. Insulin sends cells the message to eat or to get nourished. Insulin tells cells to divide and grow. This is obviously important, but if we're not actually using all of these products that the cells are making in response to insulin, if we're not actually lifting weights, if we're not actually repairing, if we're nutritionally starved, if we're not exercising, if we have lived the typical American sedentary lifestyle, this upregulation, this increase in activity in cells is not a good thing. If we're constantly eating and insulin is constantly being secreted, eventually cells are going to just tune out. They're just going to stop listening to insulin. They're going to say, hey, look, we just saw you last hour, insulin. We're not going to upregulate again. We're tired. We're pooped. And eventually, cells will just basically stop listening to insulin. And you know what? That's called insulin resistance. And it's a big problem because insulin resistance occurs to the feeding of cells a lot quicker than it occurs to the growing of cells. Cells will become more resistant to insulin in terms of getting nutrients faster than they'll become resistant to insulin in terms of their growth, in terms of their division. And you'll still have enough insulin to make cells grow, to make cells divide, to upregulate activities, except now the cells are going to be growing and dividing and upregulating in a state of starvation. They are not going to get fed. Insulin resistance causes problems with cell feeding a lot faster than it caused problems with cell upregulation and growing, and that's a bad thing. That means cells are growing and dividing and upregulating under a condition of starvation, under a condition of nutritional deprivation. And that's why insulin, or problems with insulin, or insulin resistance is behind every single chronic degenerative disease you can name. Doctors call this phenomena of messed up insulin associated with chronic degenerative disease metabolic syndrome. That's the fancy name for the disease state that's associated with cells not listening to insulin. Metabolic syndrome means everything and anything that can go wrong in the body goes wrong in the body. Problems with blood pressure, problems with the heart, problems with the brain, problems with chronic degenerative disease, autoimmune disease, inflammation. All of these can be lumped under the general heading of metabolic syndrome, which is associated with cells not listening to insulin, which is associated with too much insulin and too much calories and too much food. Can you see why fasting can be so helpful and so important, and caloric restriction as well? All right, I'm Pharmacist Ben. Got more to say when we come back from our break, and we'll take your phone calls as well. 855-660-4261 is our number. You're listening to The Bright Side. We'll be back after this. We're back on The Bright Side. I'm Pharmacist Ben, and I do have a couple more things I want to say about fasting. If you are doing a fast, one of the easiest ways to get through that hunger, that just feeling where you got to have some food, which is mostly psychological for the most part, is to really feel hunger and experience hunger. The next time you're hungry, if you're not hypoglycemic and you're not, feeling dizzy and woozy and you can't think and you're just kind of just regular hungry, why don't you just sit for a moment before you eat? You can still eat, but just sit for a moment and experience the feelings of hunger. So much of our eating behavior is reflexive. We feel hunger, boom, we're in the refrigerator. We're looking for something to eat. But if you're dieting and you're trying to lose weight, you want to experience caloric restriction, you're going through Lent, you want to fast, give up food for Lent for at least a day at a time or whatever it is. Next time you feel hungry, or when you feel hungry, sit and experience the sensation of hunger. Just feel it. What the heck is wrong with hunger? There's nothing really wrong with it, as you'll find out, unless, as I say, you're hypoglycemic, you feel dizzy and woozy, or you're getting sick, nauseous or something. The experience of hunger is nothing more than a tingle, a sensation. Sit with the tingle, sit with the sensation, and many times you'll notice that it will just pass, and you won't need to eat. And you do it again and again and again, and eventually you get the hang of the idea that simply the sensation of hunger does not necessarily have to be linked to eating behavior. Again, I'm not talking about really severe starvation or hypoglycemia. I'm talking about just garden variety hunger that most of us assume means that we got to go eat. If you can just experience that sensation of hunger, sit on the couch, feel the hunger, you'll probably notice you don't even feel anything physically, that it's mostly a mental sensation. If you can sit with it, that the pangs, the sensations will go away, and you won't be hungry. And you'll notice if you do it often enough that the weight is just dropping off, and that even fasting is real easy to do. As we'll talk about a little bit tomorrow before we get into continuing on cysteine and connective tissue, you actually feel better. You actually feel better when you don't eat. You actually feel better when you fast. And many people know, who've experienced fasting, know that when it comes time to eat again after a fast, there's almost like a sensation that you don't want to eat. You don't want to burden your body with food. And that really is a healthy state of affairs when you feel like you don't want to eat, you don't want to burden your body with food. And you'll also find that when you do eat again, you have a tendency to eat peppers and cucumbers and vegetables rather than going and munching on processed food. And I guarantee you, after a good fast, a 1 or 2 day fast, the last thing you're ever going to want to do is eat a McDonald's hamburger. The last thing you're ever going to want to do is put fast food, garbage type food in your belly after it's been all clean, your body's been all clean and pristine from a couple of days of fasting. Okay, let's see. We'll finish this up tomorrow. I've got a couple more things I want to tell you. I'll tell you why you don't want to eat breakfast. How you like that? Or at least you don't want to eat a big breakfast. That's one of the worst health strategies you could ever do, is sit and eat a huge Denny's type all-you-can-eat pancake breakfast. We'll tell you about that tomorrow as we continue talking about food and fasting and connective tissue and cysteine and skin on the bright side. We'll do that tomorrow. Welcome to the bright side, friends. We're talking a little bit about fasting. We're going to get into talking about cysteine and connective tissue. We'll definitely continue. There's a lot of things I want to tell you about cysteine. Cysteine is so amazing for hair, for skin, for detox. And it also has a downside. It also has a toxic side to it, and we'll talk about that. But I want to finish up on this idea of fasting for you guys doing Lent. I've been getting a bunch of emails about people wanting me to address fasting. So here's a couple more things I want to say about how you can use fasting for improving health, longevity, decreasing disease, decreasing inflammation, feeling better, losing weight, etc. One of the most important things about fasting we left off talking about on the program yesterday was the idea that fasting can strengthen insulin, potentize insulin. The notion of insulin resistance is really a big problem. As we get older, our body stops listening to insulin, but it doesn't stop listening to insulin. It doesn't stop listening to insulin evenly. It stops listening to insulin's effects on feeding cells. So as cells stop listening to insulin, they become less able to get nutrients, which means, of course, that they can't do their job as effectively. Essentially, they're starving. Insulin resistance will ultimately lead to cell starvation. Unfortunately, insulin's effects on fat cells continue. So even though cells stop listening to insulin's effects on feeding them, they still listen to insulin's effects on fattening them. So we get our cells, and ultimately us, end up being starved, but still being fat. We are the starving obese, and our cells are the starving obese, and this is largely because of this phenomena of insulin resistance. Doctors call all the things that are associated with insulin resistance metabolic syndrome, which basically means everything goes wrong in the body, and that indeed is what can happen when cells become starved secondary following insulin resistance. Just fasting 1 or 2 days, that's it, can help reset insulin sensitivity. Even caloric restriction, just eating less calories, or limiting our intake of fast-burning, highly caloric foods, breads and pastas and cereals, can really affect the sensitivity of insulin, can really improve the sensitivity of insulin. You can also use supplements to sensitize your insulin. This is where the Sweeties from YOUNGEVITY really excels. Chromium and vanadium, and zinc for that matter, are three really important minerals for sensitizing insulin. You'll get chromium and vanadium in the Sweeties product from YOUNGEVITY. The B vitamins can also improve insulin sensitivity, most especially thiamine and niacin, vitamins B1 and B3. Even alpha lipoic acid is really is a big-time insulin sensitizer. 400 milligrams of alpha lipoic acid a day can be a great way to sensitize your insulin. Alpha lipoic acid is also important for the liver. Alpha lipoic acid is one of the most important antioxidants in the body. Alpha lipoic acid is really interesting. It's got a water-soluble side to it, and it's got a fat-soluble side to it. In fact, alpha-lipoic acid is the only antioxidant that can affect the fatty components of the body, the cell membrane, for example, the nervous system, and it can also affect the water-soluble part of the body, the inside part of a cell, and that makes alpha-lipoic acid a super, mega important antioxidant and nutritional supplement, maybe 400 to 600 milligrams a day. It's especially important for folks dealing with liver problems, and it's especially important for folks dealing with insulin or blood sugar problems too. Elevated insulin will make it harder to lose weight. Remember, insulin's a cell-feeding hormone. Insulin feeds cells amino acids. It feeds cells fats. It feeds cells nutrients and vitamins and sugar, especially sugar. Insulin, that's probably, well, it's one of insulin's main roles is to feed cells sugar. When cells get lots of sugar, they store it, and this is especially notable in the cells we call fat cells. Fat cells are specialized to turn sugar into fat and then store it. Elevations in insulin will make it harder to lose weight because it will make it harder for the body to burn fat. Insulin acts to suppress fat burning. It encourages fat storage. Remember, it's an up-regulating substance. It's supposed to increase the energy inside a cell. So it's not going to encourage fat burning. It's going to encourage fat storage. That means the more insulin you got going on, the more insulin resistance you got going on, the less fat burning you're going to have. Conversely, keeping your insulin secretion stable and low and resensitizing your body to insulin is a great fat burning strategy. It's a great bodybuilding strategy. Professional bodybuilders or anyone serious about muscle building is aware of and probably taking advantage of this idea of intermittent fasting for enhancing muscle development via insulin resensitizing. There's also a genetic component to fasting, a genetic component to the bodybuilding effects of fasting. Not eating for an extended period of time, even for a day or two, turns on genes that build muscle. How do you like that? Not eating for a day or not eating for two turns on bodybuilding, muscle-building genetics. This activation of genes, these genes, by the way, are called sirtuins, and we're just starting to learn about sirtuins, S-I-R-T-U-I-N-S. Sirtuins are anti-aging, muscle-building genes that are activated by our behaviors. That's called epigenetics, folks. Epigenetics is the idea that we can do things in our lives, we can eat things, we can use nutritional supplements, we can exercise, we can relax, we can deep breathe, and all of these will literally change our genetics. Doc Wallach's new book is all about this. It's called Epigenetics. Well, you can, in epigenetic style, you can actually turn on bodybuilding and muscle-building genes, sirtuins, anti-aging genes, by intermittent fasting. How do you like that? All right, got more to say about fasting. We'll talk when we come back from our break. I'm Pharmacist Ben. You're listening to The Bright Side, and we'll be back after this. All right, so we're talking, finishing up here talking about fasting. If you're a bodybuilder, weightlifter, if you're interested in building muscle, if you're recovering from surgery, or you're just interested in building tissue, activation of genetics of genes called sirtuins, S-I-R-T-U-I-N-S, is associated with fasting behavior, with caloric restriction as well. There's a genetic component to the anti-aging benefits of fasting, and indeed there are wonderful anti-aging benefits and longevity benefits and anti-inflammatory benefits. There's all kinds of benefits associated with fasting behavior, and a lot of these are based on epigenetic phenomena, on turning genes on and off. Remember, we got this idea in our culture that genes are some kind of master keys to how the body is built and how the body is developed, and we forget that genes turn on and off based on our behaviors, based on our environment, based on nutrition or lack thereof, and this epigenetic phenomenon can be tapped into by using fasting behaviors or caloric restriction. Fasting can have especially important benefits for folks who are dealing with autoimmunity. Even WebMD recognizes this. WebMD certainly no friend of alternative or nutritional medicine. WebMD has an article on their website about fasting's benefits in relieving the symptoms of multiple sclerosis. I blogged about this at pharmacistben.com. WebMD says that multiple sclerosis, which most of you know is an autoimmune disease of the nervous system, WebMD recommends fasting for improving the symptoms of MS. Pretty much all autoimmune diseases, autoimmune health issues will improve with fasting, and even just eating less, even just caloric restriction can help reduce symptomology, especially reducing calories from processed foods with little nutritional value. This is so important, you guys. If you follow the food pyramid, or you listen to your doctor, you listen to average dietitians, nobody's making a distinction between the calories you get from processed foods with no nutritional value and the calories you get from good foods. Simply cutting back on our intake of low nutritional density foods can make a huge difference for autoimmune diseases. On the other hand, using nutritionally dense foods and using easy to process foods, foods that are easy for the digestive system to work with, can have a positive effect on the same kind of autoimmune symptomology. Soups, smoothies, vegetable juices. Nutritionists call these kinds of foods low residue foods, and these low residue foods are quickly utilized by the body, quickly processed by the body. That's why I'm always recommending that you use liquid nutrition. This is why the Beyond Tangy Tangerine and BTT, Beyond Tangy Tangerine 2.0, are so effective nutritional supplemental products, because they're liquid. I know I say this probably almost every day on the bright side. I certainly say it in my presentations. The Beyond Tangy Tangerine, what makes it such a singularly important nutritional supplement product is the fact that it is in a liquid format and it's nutritionally dense. That means it goes right to work. So even if you're not up for a full-blown day of fasting, which we all should be doing, but if you just don't feel like doing a full-blown day of fasting, just taking a little bit of the load off of the digestive system can help you accrue some nice health benefits and help improve the symptomology, the symptoms associated with inflammatory disorders and with autoimmune diseases as well. Hit your satiety buttons. Hit your satisfaction buttons. Combine salt and oil and veggies. This is one of the great secrets of dieting and appetite suppression, caloric restriction. Combining foods so that you hit your satiety or satisfaction centers. Salt is so important. Nothing will make you eat a lot of food more than trying to get on a low-salt diet or a low-fat diet. Have you noticed that with all the low-fat propaganda that's been out in the last 30 years, we're fatter than ever before? We're the fattest culture in the history of mankind, even though we're obsessed with low-fat, because it's not really the fat that's the problem. There's a built-in hardwired need for fat that we can exploit, that we can take advantage of, that we can leverage. By eating fat, you'll hit that satiety button, especially if you combine the fat with salt. Salt and oil go together really well, especially on top of vegetables. Try putting some salt on top of avocados. The fat in the avocados plus the salt not only will taste incredibly delicious, especially if you haven't had salt for a while, especially if you haven't had salt or oil for a while, but it's in addition to tasting incredibly delicious, it's very, very satisfying. Roast your veggies, roast your onions, roast your Brussels sprouts, or steam your broccoli. Steaming and roasting makes veggies taste sweeter, and it brightens the flavors as well. If you don't feel like roasting, use a steamer. Any kind of cooking. Just lightly, though. You don't want to cook your veggies too much. Even boiling can have a positive effect on flavor and on sugaring of vegetables. When you cook or roast or steam your vegetables, you're actually losing a little bit of water as you heat your vegetables, and the flavors become more concentrated. This is not as exaggerated in steaming as much as it is in roasting, but even steaming will get you a brighter flavor, or a brighter flavor spectrum, if you will, of your broccoli and your Brussels sprouts and your cucumber. And use lots of butter, and use lots of coconut oil, and of course use lots of salt. Macadamia nut oil is also a good oil, or use a nutritional oil like hemp seed oil or flaxseed oil. More satiety means less willpower. You know, I'm not big on using willpower to control basic hardwired behaviors, which eating is. Eating is a hardwired behavior. We are driven, we are compelled to get food, especially specific kinds of food like sugar. Using willpower is not a good strategy, because the drive for eating, the eating behaviors and the drive for sugar is built into the brain. It takes a lot of willpower to bypass that, and willpower is kind of like a muscle. Willpower has a limited capacity. That means if you're using willpower for forcing yourself to get out of bed, you're going to have less willpower to control your eating behaviors at breakfast. If you're using willpower to keep yourself from smoking cigarettes, you're going to have less willpower that's available for restricting eating behaviors. It's one of the reasons why people eat more when they quit smoking cigarettes. Willpower has a limited capacity, and what's even worse when it comes to using willpower for dieting is willpower costs blood sugar. It takes blood sugar to activate willpower. Willpower can induce hypoglycemia. Using willpower can induce hypoglycemia. Using willpower can induce secretion of cortisol, and all of these will actually make you hungrier. So using willpower to control hunger behaviors and eating behaviors is kind of a contradiction in terms. Using willpower to control eating behavior will cost you willpower, will cost you blood sugar, which will make you even more hungry. So it's not really an effective strategy to use willpower to control eating behavior. Try to hit your satiety centers using salt, using oils, using veggies, even just salt water. Even just salt in water can help hit your satiety center. Even just a spoonful of Udo's blend, or a good essential fatty acid oil, or coconut oil, or a little bit of butter with some salt on it. Just that alone can help activate satiety centers. Fasting is also a great detox strategy. Taking a few days off from food can give the detox system a chance, an opportunity to catch up. In fact, in my opinion, fasting is a way, way better detox than any herbal detox formula. Herbal detox formula, and potentially anyway, just add to the work that the body has to do. Herbs and medicinal compounds have to be processed. They're not as toxic as drugs, but they're still, in essence, medicines, which are by definition toxins. And if you're trying to detox, it sure doesn't make any sense to add toxins to your body to detox, now does it? All right, I'm Pharmacist Ben.